At the time of the writing and recording of this video, the International Court of Justice ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within their power to prevent a genocide in Gaza. This is the result of an unprecedented level of violence emerging in the Middle East, especially in the Gaza Strip. These events, in conjunction to over 75 years of bloodshed and the loss of innocent lives, children including that, has led to the Israeli government to declare war with a scope and a scale that many legal and human rights experts have claimed to be a genocide. Surprisingly, the shockwaves of these events have paved the way for a new battleground of division, discourse, and dialogue, the workplace. Many people have been expressing their views on what's happening right now in Gaza, and high-profile individuals have even quit over how their companies have responded to the violence that's going on. Additionally, tensions between employees are mounting as employers fail to recognize the line between legitimate concern and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. So we can't help but to wonder how companies can create an environment for support and dialogue in this age of polarization, especially as we have live exposure to war and violence in this globalized economy. Hi, my name is Mamobo Ogoro. I'm the founder of GERM and a social psychologist. And if you want to learn how to bridge and create dialogue, particularly in very stressful and very polarized times, make sure you subscribe to our channel as we have this conversation. We are aware that focusing in the workplace environment, while there are people literally being unalived, can be perceived as kind of out of touch. But the current events in Gaza have been so widely covered that inserting our own hot takes will just add noise and fuel to the fire. However, our expertise here at GERM, not only to unify across differences, but to support organization and workplaces where they can actually build an organization where people can belong, is hugely important in this matter. There are many people directly or indirectly affected by the events unfolding in Gaza who are not specifically in the region and have to navigate a full-time work amidst the undesirable, unmanageable tragedy. And unfortunately, this is the reality of many people, particularly in the Western world, and we want to help as best as we can. And there's also Islamophobia and anti-Semitism impacting the lives of people who might not necessarily be in a war-torn area, but they also may need support in terms of how they can actually thrive in that environment or just survive in this sort of chaos and tragedy. And lastly, we want to acknowledge as well the atrocities that are happening globally when it comes to Sudan, when it comes to Congo, when it comes to Ukraine. We want to acknowledge that these atrocities and these tragedies are affecting the lives of many individuals, not just in the workplace, but society at large. And we need to have conversations how we can support, let's say you're a hiring manager or you're a HR manager or a team leader, how we can support our teams, particularly in this age of polarization and divisions. If your organization has a presence in countries where mass violence has erupted, you need to ensure the physical safety of your staff, and you need to do that ASAP by, let's say, relocating them or connecting them with local embassies that can support them in getting them out. If you have employees with family members or relations within these conflict areas, employees must also offer them flexibility and agency while they navigate all of this. War and other forms of armed conflict are highly unpredictable and rapidly changing. So when faced with these uncertainty and unpredictability, employers must offer those affected in these situations that flexibility to accommodate in their specific environments. Flexibility might also be offering them time off, adjusting schedules, reassessing tasks, and allowing for calls or social media during office hours. And this also includes reprioritizing activities and tasks and supporting this individual who's directly affected by it to go through it. For instance, team members, employees might need time to mourn, and they might need time exclusively outside the office hours to be able to contact their affected loved ones, families, friends, etc. A sense of agency is also very needed, since witnessing violence at this scale while abroad can leave many individuals feeling completely hopeless and powerless. People can regain some of that power and control and individuality by expressing their cultural identities, let's say, by expressing themselves within their workplace environments, and by having agency and understanding within that environment too. Companies must also create a safe space that ensures dialogue, trust, and understanding. However, this doesn't mean that we need to be singing rainbows, kumbaya, sunshine, etc. Safe spaces require a lot of work, patience, effort, and oversight. And personally, I believe that there's no such thing as a completely 100% safe space for every single identity. What I believe is that we need to create more safe enough spaces where people feel seen, where people feel heard, and where people feel that they can be themselves in an environment, particularly when they are affected by war, by conflict, and in some cases by a genocide. Companies need to also clearly communicate and uphold their anti-discrimination policies and action plans. Departments such as human resources or HR must be adequately trained to mediate possible conflicts that arise from different ideologies, different beliefs, and different identities, particularly when there are different opposing sides in a conflict or war. These departments must be able to distinguish between legitimate concern, discourse, and outright bigotry. Systems of oppression such as racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, all share similarities, and companies must be trained to recognize them ASAP and nip it in the bud. If not, they risk creating a toxic workplace environment where people who are affected by these issues will not thrive, they will not progress in the organization, and the organization will be known for creating and fostering an environment where discrimination is tolerated. So firstly, on a behavioral sense, how do you deal with that sort of language or discrimination, or some may even say bigoted opinions? Each organization has their own practices and policies and pathways and disciplinary action. But the first thing that needs to be done is for that individual to be held accountable. Full stop. It is the job of those who are committed to DEI to address all forms of discrimination. It's not just HR, it's also you if you have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is how we can call out the uncalled behavior in any sort of given environment or where their discrimination occurs. And in the case where behavior is totally uncalled for, of course, that individual may go into the disciplinary procedures and policies, but oftentimes we forget those who are actually affected. It's a great time where you can remind those of the benefits that may exist within your organization. Let's say therapy, one-to-one mentoring, DEI programs that can support them in moving through what has happened. Of course, managers are not therapists, but in one-to-one calls and meetings, etc., this can be a time where they can just check in on how that individual is doing, because at the end of the day, humans are humans and we all have emotions that we need to process at the end of the day. So it's a great time for managers, for people who are working with teams, to really engage with those in that way. And of course, there's a lot of things that, let's say, an organization or a team can do to really create a safe space in this area, whether it may be in ERG groups, creating community conversations that people who are affected can come together, have conversations, or it may be the case of having mediators come in to support organizations that may be having conflict in this area and how they can bridge across those differences. There could also be areas in terms of the communication strategy as to how organizations can communicate externally if they are, let's say, affected by the conflict that may be going on within an organization. There needs to be tangible tactics and communication strategies as to how organizations may have dialogue within these issues. But I say this all because oftentimes we forget that our work is a huge part of our lives. We spend so much time in work, and every organization is not just, let's say, your metrics, your targets, your KPIs. It's hugely people, and people are a part of every single organization. I always say your people is your biggest resource that you have. And if there's a space where those people in that environment are feeling ostracized or are going through something such as a war, conflict, or they may not be directly affected by it, people that they know may be affected by it, it's a time for an organization to not only step in by way of supporting them in the resources within a workplace capacity, but create that safe environment for that person to continue on with their work. So obviously, any organization shouldn't be, let's say, coming into personal worlds and things like that. But as that person needs to continue with their livelihood, with their work, it's a space that they can come in to understand that, yes, my work understands what I'm going through and I can continue to be in this space. So if your organization wants to do that, or if your organization wants to be that kind of organization, it's important that your organization is one that unifies across differences and understands the lines between, again, legitimate concern and also bigotry, hatred, discrimination, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all the isms that go on in our society. It's important to understand how your teams can bridge across those differences, especially in these cases of huge tensions and polarization, and how they can move forward together to meet your team outcome, your team goal, etc. If you need support in any of that, of course, this is always my tagline at the end, we're always there for you. But it's again really important to kind of assess this within your teams and assess how the organization, the business, can really support in this area, or not even the area, support the people that work with them. It's hugely important. And again, if you want more, let me know, let us know, and we can support you.